Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Edo Today. I am Chamberlain. So,
it's a beautiful and cool Tuesday here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Welcome. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
From Lagos, it's good to be here. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
It's the 8th day of the 8th month. Welcome to the show. Amayo Makinde.
Yeah, I mean, there'll definitely be a lot to at least cheer you up. I've discovered one way. We're talking about AI. We'll tell you about that in a moment as you progress. But speaking of which, you know, when we speak about security matters, how we expect several of them to pull their weight and then do what they have to do, the AIG is on 2 in charge of Lagos and Ogun, Ali Mohammed, speaking to his men to be cautious and at least place high up on their list human rights matters, because I mean the question of human rights abuses, I know it sounds like falling as if it falls on deaf ears when you talk about these things, because almost as soon as you finish, or almost while you're speaking, somewhere, somehow that is being observed in breach. But this time he's reading the Riot Act, and that follows some narration of some things that transpire. But we'll let you listen to that first, and then we'll take it from there. Have a look.
Not less than 10 of policemen on that road so far. Yes, I can tell you that for free, authoritatively. Investigation is ongoing. Not all of them there are there legally or genuinely. Some on their own. After closing from work, they go there, mount roadblock on their own. Such people that are there, we consider them as illegal duty policemen. We need to sanitize the road. That's good, yes. So that we reduce some of the complaints, some of the hardship innocent Nigerians are facing as they navigate through that road. That of the senator you talked about, Lagos Command is on it. In the case of...
You know, it is cheering to hear that from an Assistant Inspector General of Police that their men are being called to question due to one activity or the other. And it was just yesterday that Malcolm was reading from the front page of one of the dailies that the CP in Lagos announced that as a collision of his men of FRSC and LASMA on doing some things that they weren't expected to be doing. Honestly, all of that is cheering. But the question that we want to then ask is, how do we know, how does the Nigerian know which checkpoint is the right one or not? On my way every morning when I'm coming to work, as early as I, get on the road, I see on the major highway, on the expressway, at the neck which is narrowed into 1 or 2 lanes, policemen in their numbers are there every morning, early as 5 a.m. Most certainly they've been there for longer. I don't know when they leave. But so I'm just wondering, by the time the road is all done, will we have policemen on the expressway? I mean, it's one of the, I didn't think it was right for them to be there. So it's one of those things that I'm just wondering, so how will the Nigerian know which is the right checkpoint and which is the wrong one? There are many. I mean, this is just Lagos and Ogun examples that we hear. How many do we know all over the nation that, these men do the thing that the AIG just talked about, that when they close from work, they just go somewhere and just mount a roadblock? I don't know how the authorities will deal with this one, but it's clear that Nigerians, particularly the young Nigerians, are at the mercy of these individuals. So, dear police, how do we know the ones that are right or not? We understand that Nigerians are supposed to be able to conduct citizens' arrests. Okay, so he has a gun, I don't. How do I conduct citizens' arrest on a man that is carrying
on a law enforcement officer?
On a law enforcement officer. I mean, I am supposed to be able to do it by law. I'm supposed to be able to, if I know that the man is not doing the right thing, I'm supposed to be able to call him to question. But how do I know he's performing a lawful duty when he is not performing a lawful duty? I think we need some education on that. That's all I have to say.
Interesting, Ayo. And in addition to your question, I think we need to ask as well, how many police officers are attached to a particular police station? We need to also ask a question of the divisional police officers in charge of the many different police stations across the country. How many police officers are attached to your police station? How many are supposed to be deployed to a particular shift? If they are assigning themselves to a particular, what do they call it now, checkpoint, and they're not supposed to, how do you take account of this? Have police operations been digitized such that you can always give account for attendance or, recalcitrant attitude or absence of duty, for a particular police officer for a particular checkpoint? And Ayo's question is also very critical, particularly for Nigerians, who always have to be subjected to the scrutiny, albeit illegal scrutiny sometimes, of illegal police stations. So these questions are very critical. But it's really, really sad that, in a country where police to citizen ratio is still very, very inadequate according to UN requirements, we're having more than the required number of police stations, police officers attached to a particular checkpoint, and which gives rise to illegal police checkpoints. We need to ask these questions of the police force and ask that, the Niger police force gives account. Our highways, pardon my language, have become a pot of soup, particularly during crisis, for police officers, and it's really sad. Where we now need them, to be to rise to the occasion to help Nigerians in distress. Well, you and I know what the story is.
Honestly,
we could go on and on, but let's go to Abuja.
Yeah, but before we go to Abuja, I just wanted to say this is not, and Markwell also said this yesterday, so let's just re-emphasize it. It is not to say that there are some policemen and women, quite a significant number, who are doing a yeoman's job. I pass them by in the middle of the night sometimes, and I'm wondering, how do these guys cope? I feel like just getting out of my car and giving them something just to say thank you to them. Unfortunately, I'm unable to most of the time because they don't carry POS, of course. But the question is, how do we know the ones that are right? Okay, Chamberlain.
Oh, yes, indeed. Ayo, and I totally feel you on that point. When you see people really trying to do what is right, when you see them doing what is acceptable, really people just want to say, well done, thank you for standing out of the pack. And even though we had this conversation yesterday, a part of the conversation yesterday, I will always say on this program that but for the fact that some policemen did their jobs very early on in my own experience, living in this world, living in Nigeria, myself and my family might not be alive today. So I can never forget that experience. It happened as young as when I was 12. Policemen who were not given any money, who had no reason to do anything, were ordinary citizens, and they just did their jobs. From consistent investigation, they saved an entire family's life and an entire neighborhood. So there are still people who, despite the shortcomings, despite the challenges, continue to do a very fine job. I also had cause to visit a police station yesterday. I haven't been to one in a very long time, I must say. But this is, should I say, special hailings to the DPO of Trademore Police Station, fine lady doing a very good job in her own vicinity. Don't forget that recently Trademore has been in the news, and we all saw visuals of how the police station there went underwater. And that's been a current, situation for that particular police station, a situation that they've had on their hand, and they've had to find how to move out of that place to a new area, to a new building entirely, because the entire police station was submerged. Well, the water has been cleared now, but still it was in no state for men of our law enforcement to, stay and carry out their duties. So I believe that there is so much more. If you also look at what happened during the EndSARS protests, initially it started as will I say, a very, very strong resistance of what the SARS, I think very especially the SARS, had become known for, the anger and the, looking for the word now, the manner in which they treated suspects. They had become very crude, very cruel. They used uncouth means. They used means that were not allowed in any rule book. And young people just had enough. But after a while, when they saw the challenges against the police, they began to say, look, this protest, much as it's against you, is also for you, because we also see that as a state, we haven't done right by you. As citizens, as people who desire an international, reputable police force, we haven't really put our mouth, in support of getting much more for our police. So while it is that we'll continue to urge the police, and I think that stood out for me yesterday, that story about the CP being the one to fish out and not shielding them, while we will continue to fish out those bad eggs who will try to give the police a bad name, we should also continue to make sure that we continue to advocate for our police, that their remunerations be paid on time, that their work environment be conducive for them to work in, that they have electricity to work in. Interestingly, the police station I visited yesterday had an inverter, which is a good thing to see. So I'm hoping that, we'll see developments like this. It shouldn't be that when people get there, it's go and complain and then they'll say, okay, pay for paper, pay for biro, pay for this. Then why are they there? Pay for fuel and now we know that fuel has gone up. Pay for fuel to put in the car, So I think that a lot of things need to change. So let us hope that we really put our money where our mouth is. And all of these savings we say we're making from subsidy now, that the police, our law enforcement, we make an investment, because essentially that's what it will be. It will be an investment in our own security and welfare when we look after our own police.
Now that it's 617 naira per litre, even when it was 195, they had challenges fueling their vehicles. So have you ever stopped to wonder sometimes too? So what has changed in terms of governance and how they attend to the functions, at least mobility for the police? Has anything really changed? Look, yeah, sometimes it's good. Muhammad Yari, AIG Zone 2, in charge of Lagos and Ogun. Sometimes you hear some DPOs, some constables, some officers. Time and again, you get to hear that, some of them standing out. But as good as that is, why can't we just have that as institutionalized to ensure that that is across board? It means if those people can do it, it can be done in the police force. So that's the next level. That is what we want to see, because the people who you and I relate with on a regular basis on the streets, those are the policemen who, you want to see a lot of changes, at least first and foremost, before it then moves further up. So, so much to say really, but yes, we encourage them. And Ayo, please, next time out, have some cash. Take a look at Vanguard newspaper. We'll start with Vanguard newspaper today. The lead story at the front page: Ministers, Senate stops El-Rufai Okotete Danladi. As a lead story on the front page of Vanguard newspaper. Awaits security reports, checks, confirms Wike, Keyamo, Alake, Tunjojo, Pate, Fagbemi, Edu, 38 others. So you get to see endless list. So by the way, go ahead and yeah, we heard what some of you thought about the screening, but who knows, you might have additional perspective. We always do, that's all humans, you always think. So by all means, send us what your observations were about all of these developments as they played out. And then I'm going to focus on this one. I think if we, oh no, before I go to the back page, Biafra sits at home, is dead, buried, Nnamdi Kanu. So I don't think anybody will have any reason whatsoever, especially when you also get to hear the police saying, look, we're on this now. We'll provide security to anyone who wants to go to work on Mondays and any other day. So go ahead and do that. So the big one, yeah. Gallant Super Falcons bow out of Women's World Cup after nail-biting penalty.
No.
So it's not only police
yesterday.
that is gallant. The Super Falcons too are gallant yesterday. They played really well.
They did. 120 minutes, holding the English team for 120 minutes. No goals. Considered none. Well, they also scored none too. But I'm sure the English team were wondering, who are these girls? Giving us such a hard time.
It was a lovely, lovely one to see. And yeah, at the end of the day, the spirit of sportsmanship came through from Nigerians to the Falcons. So we only want to see continuity.
From Nigerians to the Falcons, not from the English team to the
Well,
not from the English team to the Falcons. Eh?
Well, I mean, the way we accepted the loss, that's the perspective. I mean, they're professional. They're expected to do all of that. I mean, you don't expect anything less. But, you know, when it comes to football, the way when you lose a match and you see several people who watch football, how they lose matches, oh, dear, you don't want to go near them.
You know, I saw a joke yesterday about, I think one of the English players, you know, going to go and comfort a Nigerian, I think a Nigerian goalkeeper. After, because I mean, you can imagine how she must feel after that. That's such
a stellar performance.
Yeah, so she felt very bad, and one of the English strikers was going to go and, you know, comfort her and also tell the cameras to get the hell out, you know, stop trying to focus on her grief. And somebody put that and said, oh, what spirit of sportsmanship? And somebody said, oh no, this is eye service. The way not to have made this girl cry was not to have scored in the very first instance. They said, oh, she was just doing her job. Oh well, social media can just make you laugh sometimes, but I remember that, and it was just good to see that that's how we took it. You know, we took it very well because the girls did give a very impressive performance.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Would that be all?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at what leadership has on the front page this morning. Tinubu cabinet, that's what they're focusing on. Senate hangs confirmation of El Rufai Okotete Danladi on security clearance. That's the lead story on the front page of leadership this morning. Claire's Alake, Malagi, Wike, Tunji Ojo, Pate, Beta Edu, 39 others. Keyamo begs senators for forgiveness. That's also there on page 4 of the story. I love how our reporter did that report yesterday. You will want to see details when we move on in the program today. So make sure, if you didn't see the report on the news at 10 last night, do not miss it on this program. Very interesting storytelling. You also see a number of other stories just beside the nameplate there. No plans to impeach my deputy. That's according to Obaseki. He's been responding to what his deputy has been saying in the media, and also his actions, going to court to go and, you know, make sure that they stop the State Assembly. Besides, can such a judgment hold? Because I know that the National Assembly has always argued that you cannot use a court judgment from stopping them from carrying out their own constitutional rules. So even if you have such an injunction, how much water will it hold? Because don't forget, there are 3 separate arms of government. But hey, the governor says he doesn't even have any such plans. So you also have this story, which is good for the Navy. This is what we should have been saying. NMDPRA corroborates Navy, says empty appraisal cleared for HPFO. That's the high pour fuel oil. Excuse me, don't forget that the Navy had come out with its own results earlier. They had all taken samples, the Nigerian Navy, the NMDPRA, and I think one other body. I have to get the third body now. And all of them had taken samples of what was on the empty appraisal, that particular ship intercepted by Tantita. And the Navy had said that, look, Tantita doesn't have any powers to intercept a ship. All they have powers to do is to provide intelligence. So right now, it's like the NMDPRA is done conducting their own tests as well, and they're corroborating what the Nigerian Navy has to say. You also see here, ICJ judgment, no land will be ceded to Cameroon. That's according to Governor Otu. The story is on page 16 of the paper.
Are they taking back Bakassi?
No, I think that's done and dusted. But there's been talk in recent times of another land being in danger of being ceded.
This is what happens when you give people an inch.
Yeah, they take a mile. Page 16 is where you'll find details on that. I know the House of Representatives raised it very recently. So, but it looks like Governor Otu is on top of matters. We hope he is. So page 16 is where you'll see what he plans to do in that regard. And you also see this. I know that this one gets Chamberlain's response most times. Hard forms necessary to ramp up tax revenues. That's according to FRS. You'll be interested in that story. That's certainly, I know. Page 7 is where we'll see details. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Well, I wonder if he'll be interested in this one that I'm sure is sure to get your attention in Abuja. I'm going with The Guardian this morning, and it chooses to face reality rather than trail on happenings at the corridors of power. Listen to this. Housing affordability crisis. Inflation, high interest rates, spike sales, rents by 40% in major cities. And there's a pictorial there on the front page just to tell the story more effectively. And just one rider before the pictorial. Highest average rent by location in Q1 2023 for 3-bedroom apartment. Lagos is 4 million naira, and that's very moderate depending on the location in Lagos. Abuja is 10 million naira. It's a good thing our friends over there are Abuja landlords. Port Harcourt is 2.5 million naira. Kano, you won't believe it, is 2 million naira, and Enugu is 1.8 million naira. Of course, this again, I emphasize, may be moderate prices considering the most recent increase in the pump price of petrol, which of course has a ricochet effect on every other thing as far as cost of living is concerned.
Well, it's an average.
Yeah.
You know, one should expect that, but then it also depends on location. I don't think you will get a 4 million naira apartment in Okokomaiko, for instance.
But it also depends on where you reside or where you work, rather.
Exactly. That's why it's, you know, it's an average, and it really depends on a lot of things. But I'm really surprised about Kano.
Yeah, Kano, 2 million naira.
It's even more expensive than Enugu.
So that means if you went to a highbrow area in Kano, it could be more expensive than 2 million naira, 3-bedroom apartment.
And they say that there is...
Okay, so let's take a look at other stories. Something for you to reflect on, by the way. You can also share your comments on our Twitter handle. Listen to this one. Again, Imo residents comply with ECOWAS sit-at-home order. That's a page 29 read. That's a sad development, and we wonder what police operatives are doing in that part of the country.
I think for me that means that, you know, communication hasn't really gone. We've not been able to persuade people. We don't have enough persuasive communication for people to trust, you know, this government, I should say, enough to dare to go out. I don't think people are happy to stay at home on a Monday morning.
I'm happy you raised the subject of persuasion, because persuasion starts with conviction that if I go out, I'll be safe to go out.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, yet again, the leader of the group, IPOB, the proscribed group, by the way, had cause to speak recently, and he addressed Simon Ekpa directly, according to what the papers reported, asking him to suspend the sit-at-home or to put an end to the sit-at-home order. So if he didn't believe that ECOWAS wielded some form of influence with the people in the southeast, then he wouldn't address ECOWAS directly. These are real issues that the leaders in the region must address. They must, you know, wield more influence than, you know, these leaders in the southeast. These leaders of proscribed groups in the region. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
Daily Trust newspaper has this one on its front page. Niger airspace closure, Europe-bound flight diverted amidst fear of fare hike. If you missed that, you know, conversation on Channels Television yesterday, where, you know, the implication of that no-fly zone was discussed. You may want to go listen to Mr. Peter's side. Lagos-London one-way ticket costs 5.6 million naira. Okay.
One-way ticket?
Yes, one-way ticket. Mali, Burkina Faso send delegation to Niger. Air France suspends flights. ECOWAS meets again Thursday. Germany threatens Couists with sanctions and prosecution. Interesting. All of that you'll find talked on page 4 of the paper this morning. Several other stories, including this one. WAEC withholds results of 262,803 candidates.
Wow, that's quite a number.
That is quite a number. That's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
On to New Telegraph. Chicago University. Tinubu files motion to block U.S. courts from releasing records to Atiku. And they go on FOI there, so sometimes when you apply for some of these things, it's easy peasy in some cases. And so it's a lot easier to carry out some functions over there than you find here. Here, it's like trying to squeeze water out of the rock for journalists in Nigeria to get information for you in many cases. And so, but here you get to see, okay, let's look at some of the writers now. Says, Atiku's petition falls under 1974 privacy law for American students. We're not opposed to Tinubu's motion, Atiku's lawyers. So they're taking a battle over there as well. So you might want to see that one. Ministerial screening, El-Rufai, Danladi, Okotete, not confirmed by Senate. They are undergoing security checks, Akpabio, as 45 others scale through. Southeast senators call on Tinubu to correct regional imbalance. I'll take your case to him, Senate President. Keyamo apologizes for disrespecting NAS in 2020. So that you get to see there. Job racketeering. I collected over 75 million naira for FCC chair. IPIS officer tells reps. You might want to read this and find out what's been going on. So, wow, this should be a bigger headline.
Yeah, there's a picture of her in another daily holding the Quran and also, you know, speaking very passionately, I'd say.
Wow.
You might want to see the story. Somewhere inside the paper.
I wonder how long has this been going on for? Who are those in this ring? Will they be called up? Are we doing anything to ensure that we block this from going on again institutionally, across board? So there's one way to do these things. Transparency. When they publish some of these requirements, it's easy, it's clear. People know whether you're doing anything with any government agency. If the processes and steps are all known to everybody else, I don't think there'll be anywhere for people to hide, if you ask me. That's New Telegraph this morning.
Well, this Nigeria has this screened, confirmed. Wike, Alake, Tunjojo, Pate, Lokobiri, 40 others pass ministerial screening. Senate fails to confirm El-Rufai, Danladi, Okotete as ministers. Keyamo's past comments throw Red Chamber into rowdy session. The story is on page 4 of the paper. The record he now holds. By screening through the Senate into a rowdy session.
Oh dear.
You also see this. West African bloc to meet on Niger Coup on Thursday as Air France suspends flights to Burkina Faso, Mali, after Niger shut airspace. The story is on page 17 of the paper. So it's been an attempted quid pro quo, but if you also look at the fact that perhaps one of the biggest partners to Niger hitherto had been France, and now France is not flying to Niger anymore, you have to also ask citizens who want to leave Niger, that's Nigerians who want to leave Niger, how do they then leave? You know, if they're going to fly out internationally. So, big stories there as well. Look at this, FG to end taxes on tomatoes, other raw food items, says Joint Task Board, that's JTB. So that's also there as well. And ex-aide exposes FCC chairman reveals how jobs are sold to Nigerians.
Wow.
Oh, yes. This is a racket that has gone on for way too long, and I'm happy that the House of Representatives is not letting this lie. They're not just leaving it alone and thinking it's something that they cannot deal with anymore.
Yeah.
So I hope that this probe ends conclusively, and there will be some action taken on it. Jobs that are available are transparently advertised to Nigerians, and only those who can, who are qualified get this job, not things to be sold. I mean, even the people, I blame people who buy it. If they not find that that's the only way to get the jobs, they'll find the money. Any wonder then that, our public institutions are how they are? Okay, we'll leave it there for this Nigeria, and also leave it there for our look at the papers this morning. We ask you to stay on and let us get into the main segment to get into the meat of today's matter. Please stay with us.
Out of the mouth of 2 or 3.
For 6 non-consecutive days, we have watched ministerial nominees mount this lectern and present themselves to be screened by the Senate. We saw nominees take a bow and exit the stage. Some called to task over discrepancies in academic qualifications and controversial comments and tweets. A nominee overcome with emotions mid-presentation, and the nomination withdrawn. But we never saw the Senate go into a rowdy session during the screening exercise until Monday, when the former Minister of State for Labor, Mr. Keyamo, was before the upper chamber. Mr. Keyamo is the last of 48 nominees to be screened and confidently informs the Senate how he had spent the last 30 years using the instrumentality of the law to advance the cause of democracy and strengthen the powers of the Senate.
I felt that if I looked at all the provisions of the law, and I felt the military had to bow to this Senate, had to subject itself to the authority of the Senate. And so on my own, I wrote then to the Senate President, Senator David Mark, I wrote to the then Attorney General Andwaka, I wrote to all of them that, look, this procedure is not right. The military must come here for confirmation before they assume, their duties.
My order is anchored on Section 88 of the Constitution.
Trouble begins for Mr. Keyamo when the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Darlington Nwokocha, draws the attention of the Senate to events in 2020 when Mr. Keyamo held sway as the Minister of State for Labor as regards the 52 billion naira public works program. Senator Nwokocha recalls how Mr. Keyamo at the time denied lawmakers the opportunity to oversight the program.
What we are talking about is a 52 billion naira appropriation, and the right of appropriation resides on the legislature. That is our right. And I know quite well that the right of oversight resides on us, because we have to hold you accountable for whatever thing we appropriate to you. It is our right. And when he was invited, he expressly told us, to the public, that we want to hijack his role. That we want to blackmail us, that we are corrupt, that we want to hijack his role.
Senator Ainaya Abaribe quickly seconds the motion that Mr. Keyamo's ministerial screening be suspended.
Both the House of Representatives and the Senate, that I do support that this nominee should be stepped down pending when he decides that the National Assembly has that right to inquire into the workings of a minister and his ministry. I so second.
At this point, Mr. Keyamo's screening effectively divides the Senate, with some senators calling for a division.
Distinguished senator, take your seats, please.
The Senate Majority Leader calls for an executive session in an attempt to bring order to proceedings.
Mr. President, I'm very, very distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. May I, at this time, move that we dissolve into an executive session to be able to iron out some issues.
Nearly 2 hours later, the session ends. A sober-looking Keyamo is once again on the stage.
The apology is without reservation at all. I apologize. There are only two things I just need to say before I go, because we are before the world, one or two things. One is that regarding that program, because when Nigerians hear a figure, their ears go up. Hey, one big figure has been mentioned. No. Regarding that program, every single payment, and I insisted to the past president that it must come from the central bank directly to the accounts of the people who were nominated to receive those funds. And like I said, I'm sorry for that misunderstanding.
A federal lawmaker makes a case for Mr. Keyamo.
Now that he's apologized before the National Assembly, including myself, because I also have a question that I should ask. But now that I apologize, I want to appeal to the General House and the Senate under the leadership of Mr. Chairman, who the Senate President, that I am moving a motion for him to take the leave of the Senate and to go and not to sin again. Take a leave and go, and don't repeat such again now that you have apologized before this honour house.
Those who are in support of this motion say aye. Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. The apologies are hereby accepted.
The Senate accepts his apology and he is asked to exit the podium.
Quite a rowdy session earlier with a lot of...
Will the Senate approve the nomination of Dr.
The Senate proceeds to confirm the ministerial nominees.
Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The upper chamber confirms a total of 45 nominees. 3 of the nominees, namely former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, Mrs. Stella Okotete from Delta, and Abubakar Danladi from Taraba State, are not confirmed because they are still undergoing security checks.
Welcome back. We're starting off discussing the report you just saw, the screening for the ministerial nominees, and we've got 2 gentlemen joining us to shed light on that matter. Senator Yemi Adaramodu is chairman, Senate Committee of Media. He's also, from the list released yesterday, chairman, Senate Committee on Youth and Sports. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, my brother, and good morning, my sister.
Yeah, we also do have Wale Adebayo, who is the presidential candidate for the SDP in the 2023 elections. He joins us virtually from the States. Good morning, and thank you for joining us as well today.
Thank you, Chamberlain, Malpet, and God bless Nigeria. Good morning.
All right, so Senator, let's start off with you. I mean, clearly, people want to find out why was the Senate so? I mean, that was the highlights yesterday, the Keyamo screening. Why did he make so much emotion from senators?
Well, there was nothing very unusual yesterday. When the nominee came up and then about to be screened and if there are issues to be raised by senators, and then our going to a closed session is not majorly because of nominee Keyamo Festus. So it's a conglomerate of several other issues and matters to be discussed behind closed doors.
But that was part of it.
Well, I would say yes, it was, because initially when it came up and then some issues were raised, actually we were not discussing any nominee before they entered the chamber for screening. So and then when some issues are raised, and then we need to maybe put all issues together and ask questions from the nominee, then it is very pertinent and it's very is normal and somehow more effective when we want to do our job, that especially the screening thing. So all of us just to come together, talk about it, and then issues that are going to be raised, then we harmonize and then raise the issues when the nominee is called upon to maybe defend himself or to say some things about himself or about some issues and matters. But it is not because of Festus Keyamo alone that we receded into executive session yesterday.
So, but the session had to, I mean, it had to call the executive session at that crucial point when that rowdy session was going on. Was it a coincidence?
Yeah, it was coincidental. At the same time, it was circumstantial. Oh. So, but what is part of our system in the chamber that when some issues are to be raised, especially issues that maybe that is on the personality of somebody that is within, who is a stranger. We call that person a stranger since he's not a senator. So he's a stranger if that person is before the Senate, and then we have some issues raised by members. So definitely we have to decide into closed session to discuss among ourselves and then take a position. So then that was part of what happened yesterday. And then we took the position.
Your very first words were that what happened yesterday was nothing very unusual.
Yes.
Yeah, some people will disagree with that. I mean, how usual is it that the Senate President has to stand to call colleagues to order? How unusual is that?
Why the Senate President stood up yesterday was that when many senators were already standing up, so for other senators to sit down, the Senate President had to
That's what I'm
up.
saying. Usually when it's rowdy, the leader is the one who or the whip rather, tries to call the House to order. You know, and we heard order several times yesterday. That didn't happen until the Senate President stood and he read the rules.
Parliament is made up of very active men and women. And definitely there must be some time that voices will just be raised, and then when senators were standing up, then the Senate President will stand up in order for other senators to sit down so that the whole House or the chamber can be called to order.
Indeed, I'm asking, how often does that happen?
How often? For example, this 10th Senate, we have just started. So along the line, we are still going to some other sessions whereby we have questions like that being raised or issues being raised.
So you will admit that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yes,
it doesn't happen all the time. So yesterday too was an unusual situation.
It was not unusual for a parliament for tension and voices to be raised, and then
I see the light in which you raised that. But why this is interesting for me is because I remember speaking to another senator who says when we raise this issue of how the screening has been conducted and how for some Nigerians they haven't really gotten the chance to see how fit these senators, I beg your pardon now, the nominees are, how fit for the job. By that I mean, how fit, I'm trying to find another word now, but it's not coming, but just how prepared the nominees are for the roles that they might be playing when they are eventually confirmed. And he said he doesn't understand why Nigerians are up in arms, and there is a screening process and there is a confirmation process. Yes. So I was wondering, for senators who were in a rather rowdy session yesterday, who were very unhappy with Mr. Festus Keyamo, I was wondering why they couldn't wait until confirmation for them to say, no, he's not going to sail through. These are the issues that we have against him.
No, number one.
Why were they raising that and making the House such a rowdy situation?
There are two steps. There is screening, there is confirmation.
Indeed.
During screening, that is when the nominee will be available for you to question. And that is when you can raise matters or issues with them or her. So during confirmation, the nominee will not be there. So definitely it was when Mr. Festus was there yesterday, because he was there for us to ask questions, to raise issues and raise matters, either for or against him. So that was why yesterday, like you rightly said, that was when those voices were raised. Okay. So during confirmation, definitely senator will not wait till confirmation because the nominee will not be there when he or she is going to be confirmed.
Would you say then that for those senators, beg your pardon, for those nominees for whom there were issues, for instance, yes, you know, some people had raised issue of petitions, some people had raised issue of irregularity in some of the dates presented by some of the nominees, some people had raised issue with the certificates presented by some of the nominees. And, you know, the Senate President said, oh, no, you're going to reconcile that. You mean you came here and you didn't bring everything you're supposed to bring? You know, oh, you know, you will have to go and reconcile that. We thought we were going to see them again. But it does appear that what has happened is that they were given a soft landing and they've gone.
No, that is not soft landing. Because if you fail to bring a document which was necessary for you to have brought, like you said, and then you now later brought it, so definitely you don't need to appear before the whole house anymore, because if there was a particular document or a particular material or a particular issue which does not border on the security of very sensitive or somehow very explosive, so definitely, so when you are asked to bring to justify, so and you can bring to justify, definitely you don't need to be brought back to the chamber for the committee of
But for transparency, don't you think it would have been important for that to be clarified to the Nigerian public?
When we are screening, look, the parliamentarians are representatives of the people of Nigeria. We all come from one constituency or the other, and so that is why it is people from my own senatorial district. I represent them. All of them cannot come from Ilawe, Ekiti, Barodo, or Ikere to come and be talking in Abuja. So I represent them. So if the names of the nominees had already been submitted. So anybody that has anything against any nominee should have maybe filed in either petition or complaints or whatever. So then the Senate will consider all those things. Then if it is about maybe somebody does not put in maybe his either birth certificate, and then we raise the issue with it and say that we want to see your birth certificate, bring it, and that person could bring it after the initial screening. Definitely, we don't need to bring him or her back to the chamber again and be rescreening him or her. That will be wasting time, since you have brought what we have asked from you to bring. So that is why some of them, even maybe in one or two instances, that such questions were raised, such proposals were raised. So they brought all those things that were needed and necessary.
Why did the President of the Senate rush to the villa?
No, look, yesterday, even when I was reading the scrolling on so many TV stations yesterday, I was just laughing. I said, look, this President stood up yesterday to go to the villa, not because of Festus Keyamo, not because of any screening, not because maybe the villa invited the Senate President to come and then maybe ask questions or to come and do one favor or the other. No, there had been a prior invitation of the Senate President and the leadership of the Senate to the villa based on the security issues, especially the coup d'etat in the Niger Republic. So there had been a meeting scheduled for 2:30 p.m. yesterday, but during the screening, we had already eaten into the time that the Senate President would have gone there for that meeting. It was a security meeting. So by the time he left, around maybe 3 o'clock or 3:30, he could not just come back immediately until around 4. So, but some people just mistook it that he was summoned to the villa because of Festus Keyamo. He was not summoned to the villa because of Festus Keyamo.
So he didn't raise that matter at all?
No, Festus Keyamo was just one out of 48 nominees that were screened. So one person cannot generate such a concern for the villa to be inviting the Senate to the villa.
So these other 3 senators,
yes,
are they going to be confirmed?
Well, the questions raised about them is an ongoing issue. So once the Senate is satisfied, then definitely, if we need to invite them to the chamber for the confirmation and the screening, then we do that.
Can the Senate be satisfied if security is not satisfied?
That's what I'm saying. If security is not satisfied, Senate cannot be satisfied.
So it's not a given that they will be cleared? It depends on what the security agencies say.
It depends on what security and then the person that nominates them say.
We have another matter, but let's bring in Mr. Wale Adebayo, who joins us virtually. Good morning again. So tell us, I mean, having also observed the screening process from where you are, probably before you traveled, what did you make of it generally?
Well, the Senate is doing its job. I think there is a general need to understand the role of the Senate in this process. The person with the primary responsibility to select his team, to select his ministers, is the president, and is the one to do most of the background checks because he knows what he wants. He's the employer. He's the person they are coming to minister to assist. Now, the role of the Senate is to ensure that, one, the nominee is constitutionally qualified. Find out as a citizen, is an adult, is educated to the minimum level. And if a person is qualified to be a member of the National Assembly or qualified to contest to be a member of the National Assembly, the Constitution advises the Senate that that person is qualified to be a member of the Federal Executive Council. Now, so the job of the Senate at that level is basic. Now, there are other things. If, for example, the nominee has other history or features, like in the case of Mr. Keyamo, who had been a minister before and who had a record with the Senate, they may want to question him on that record. Now, but the majority of the work after that resides with Nigerian people, because when the Senate is empaneled or assembled or convoked, you are supposed, they are representing you. So if you know anything that may make a nominee not to be qualified, then you do that by way of petition to the Senate. Now, with respect to security agencies, their role is advisory because they have the know-how to assist the two organs that have constitutional duty of screening: the president as the executive and the Senate as the legislature. So anything they do is to advise them. I don't think they're bound to take the advice. If, for example, there's a security report that a particular person is involved in domestic violence or is being investigated for something serious, and that investigation might embarrass the government later or has some record overseas, which the senator may not know, it doesn't mean that they have to follow. They will take that into consideration. So the Senate might advise the president to say, well, in view of what we know, do you want to reconsider? Now, the president may reconsider, he may not reconsider. So I think, legally speaking, the Senate is playing its role the way it should be.
So, Parliament Biden, are you, as somebody who is an employer of labor, you sought to lead in different times, are you satisfied with what you saw yesterday and previously?
Okay, let me start with the appointment that the president has made. They won't be the one I would have made if I was president, maybe one or two. So everyone has their own ideological background, has their own program, what they want to do. However, as long as they are satisfactory to the president, and he is the executive because he doesn't share the executive function with anyone. Under the Constitution, the executive powers are vested in that one person, the president. So he has to choose his team. It is his right constitutionally. Now, it is not for us to supplant his judgment with ours. So he has the right to make a weak choice, a bad choice, but he cannot make an unconstitutional choice. So if the person is legally qualified, it is up to the president to use somebody to work for him whom I would rather not use to work for me. That is what we need to understand. So the Senate is not supervising the president in the choice of his ministers. Say, you are not making the right choice, this person will have been better. No, they want to ensure that they are assisting him not to violate the Constitution. For example, appointing an 18-year-old who is not old enough to be in the National Assembly, appointing someone who is not educated at all, or appointing someone who is not a Nigerian citizen. So some of the issues regarding maybe the tidying up of their papers and all of that. Those have to do with the Senate rules. I think the Senate might look into a situation whereby before they invite someone to the plenary, they should make sure that they do all the housekeeping, because it should study what their colleagues do in other countries. Before you come to the plenary, that's not the place where a senator should stand up and say, I can't find 1 or 2 documents. No, they should make sure that the clerk clears all of that for them, and they are all satisfied, and they confirm from all of them, are you okay with the paper, before you invite the president. And we need to know that, there's nothing unusual about a rancorous parliament. In fact, that's the temperament of a parliament. You don't expect them to be placid and sit down there like they're watching movies. They are supposed to show their disagreement where they disagree. So I don't want Nigerians to say that when you have any activity in the Senate, any disagreement, any gesture, that, the Senate is not doing the session correctly. No, the Senate is supposed to be live.
Well, we also do have this little matter of ECOWAS, but my colleagues will also have more questions for both of you when we return after this break, so stay on with us.
Passionate about 2 things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bowl Rice. Homegrown just like you. Big Bowl Rice. Tasty rice. Nourished you. We are passionate about 2 things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bowl Rice. Homegrown just like you. Big Bowl Rice. Tasty rice. Nourished you.
Hi. Now let me tell you about Safari Valley Eco Resort, the first of its kind in West Africa. Upon your arrival, you are introduced to your butler, who plans your itinerary.
We were surrounded by wildlife from the moment we entered the eco park.
So many activities, all in the same premises. Visit the gym or the stables, they have it all. At my break, I'm able to practice my putting.
We also went fishing on a man-made canal. Our tour guides taught us so much about the wildlife and how to interact with them.
They used only electric vehicles here. This creates a serene environment. I'm told it's over 1,000 acres. My cabin here sits on 2 acres with a large terrace space overlooking my private swimming pool. Now this is royalty. They have their own farms, thousands of fruit trees. I can also have my lunch here at the waterfall. Quite a beautiful place you have here.
Visit Safari Valley Eco Resort in Ghana, bringing you closer to nature.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Niger. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Passionate about 2 things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian premium Big Bull rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bull rice, tasty rice, nourished you. We are passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian premium Big Bull rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bull rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
Thank you all for staying with us. Well, we still have these two gentlemen with us, but let me ask you, Mr. Adebayo, let me quickly follow up on the question Chamberlain asked you earlier. Now, seeing the process of the screening so far in the Senate and the constitutional requirements that you know, what balance would you say can be drawn between political considerations and actual governance, knowing that the president has to select people from all 36 states according to the Constitution, and because he doesn't know all the states, he may have to consult one way or the other, and some people will be fielded for him. What else could he have done in that regard?
Well, it's a false dilemma. It's a problem that shouldn't exist. First, stop electing people who don't know all the 36 states, because you are supposed to know your constituency. Imagine a senator representing 6 local governments saying that he doesn't know all the 6 local governments. It's never allowed. So if you want to be president, you need to be somebody who knows everybody, everywhere. So I think that for what I know about the president, he was everywhere. During the campaign, we were all competing against each other. So he knows everywhere. So that whatever choice is made is the choice he wants to make. However, there is no state where you don't have qualified people. So the question is what the president is looking for. I think 2 ways to look at it. One, don't ever substitute what you want for what the president should want. You should know that he knows what he's looking for. So that's number one. Number two, don't excuse that the president is making choices that otherwise he would not like to make. He makes choices that he wants to make. So let's hold him responsible for the quality of the people he chooses, and let's hold him responsible for the performance of those who he has chosen, because he has thousands of Nigerians to choose from, and he has chosen these 47 people or so, 45 from among them. So that's the best he can do in the circumstance. And as time goes on, he might learn his lesson and improve on them. But you can never know how good a candidate, a nominee is, just by looking at their CV, because governance is dynamic. One, the leadership provided by the president will determine how they perform. Some presidents we have seen in the past will make you a minister, and you can't even see the president to report back to. The president is isolated from you, so that can affect them. The president has to have a vision, not just appoint a minister and say, I've done my job. He needs to lead them. And thirdly, Nigerians need to understand that we are selecting people to become ministers to govern, not to represent. The people representing you are your members of the National Assembly. So don't look at a nominee from Lagos State, representing Lagos State, to be a minister, or from Kano, representing Kano. No, that is just for constitutional requirement. Once they are serving, start evaluating them based on their governance performance. What the Constitution said we should be looking for.
Now, that raises another question, Mr. Adebayo, and it's a good thing that you are the one that mentioned it. Do you think Nigerians really understand the tasks set before anyone that they put in office? That question is advisedly asked because a good number of times there are expectations that people have of certain people in government, of ministers, of chairmen of local government, of political appointees, like in the case of this ministers that have been nominated and screened and confirmed. Do you think Nigerians have an understanding? Their expectations, no doubt, are there, unequivocal. But do you think we have due understanding of what these people are expecting, so we don't expect too much or too little from them?
We don't know enough. And that's because the institutions that are supposed to educate Nigerians themselves don't know enough. With due respect, the press doesn't know enough. So if you are evaluating the role of the Senate, the security agencies, and the role of the president in the choice of the ministers now, what are the role of the press? What are the issues they're emphasizing? They're emphasizing very sensational issues that don't, as if the journalists don't know these nominees. I've been reading through the press. I've not seen them coming up with anything that can enlighten the public about the process, about the nominees themselves, and things like that. So they go and ask senators questions which journalists should be informing senators about. So they will ask other people about things. So we need to learn that. The political parties themselves need to train their members and to train the public as to the role of different offices in government, including what it takes to be a minister. And so it is this true process of learning that we will now know that, okay, this is the quality you expect of a minister. This is the role. The man is just going, the man or woman is just going there to advise the president, to assist the president, to carry out his executive function. Nothing other than that. And the person whom is going to go and assist is the one who determine this is the kind of person I want. I've seen, and someone who is familiar. It is a malpractice of the highest order for a president to say, I appointed somebody as minister whom I don't know anything about. I've heard people saying that, but it is totally a dereliction of executive function. You must know the person. You must, there must something that attracts you. So you cannot say, I hired somebody to work in my office whom I don't know anything about. So we all have to learn, but it's not the case that the role is to be played only by those who are in the Senate or those who are in government. It will be played by everybody. These people who we are talking about now, they have
just a quick one on the issue you just raised now about political parties training their members. What was the experience for you? How easy was it, or is it, to train members of your political party?
First, we find it, first we are doing it, and we find it that it's necessary because when you talk, you see the shock. When you, like when I was running for president, and I would say, well, look, let us work together, but when I'm selecting my cabinet, there's no politics. Then they get shocked. Why? What if I work for you? Yes, you can work for me and make us succeed, but we are not successful until we serve the public. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to make you Minister of Health because you will help me to get number of votes in this place. There are other ways I will recognize you and listen to you, have access to me, but I need to function. So when you have that culture shock, later they get used to it. So it is a process. We need to let people know. Sometimes you can become president in Nigeria, as happened in the past, where you're not even too familiar with the function of that office, with the responsibility. You can become a minister, and you think your job is to compete with the governor of your state as the big man at federal level. So people, that means other various levels. Yes, please.
I hope that, you know, other members of the executives or other presidents would be, you know, as frank and as down to earth as you choose to be in your disposition towards political rewards for election work, so to speak. Let me come to you, Senator Adaramodu, and I'd like to quickly look beyond the dust raised by Senator Nwokocha yesterday on the challenge to the constitutional powers of the legislature by the former minister and nominee, ministerial nominee, Mr. Festus Keyamo, SAN, to the substance of it, really, to look at other past events where members of the executive have shunned invitations by the legislature and, in fact, you know, constituted themselves as an affront to the powers of oversight of the legislature. If we looked at it holistically, Senator Adaramodu, what would be the lessons about how the legislature, or where it draws its legitimacy from, and, you know, for future incidents like that, such that its oversight functions would not be put to question?
Oh, thank you very much, my sister. Good morning. Well, you know, there are three major functions of the legislator. One is to make laws. Number two is oversight functions. Number 3, to represent your constituency or senatorial district. And it's an inalienable constitutional function of the legislature to oversight the executive and even the judiciary. So, and we, like you posited yesterday when there was the issue raised, maybe about one nominee over his attitude to the legislature, about oversight functions being performed by the legislature earlier in the Ninth Assembly. Definitely there will be friction at times, and then when friction happens, like Mr. Festus Keyamo analyzed at the end of the day, explained at the end of the day, what really transpired then about the issue of the distribution of 774,000 jobs across the 774 local governments of the Federation, that the committee that was in charge of the employment and the productivity and Nigeria. So in the Senate. So when they wanted to ask questions about how is he going to do this and how is he going to do that, and then it became something rancorous then in the Ninth Assembly that there was a friction. So because of that, when it came yesterday, then the issue reared its head, which supposedly that we knew that it will raise its head. And then the question was posed to him, why it happened. And then he explained himself. So, but that one does not take away the rights and the functions of the legislation from oversight, from overseeing the executive. It is there and it is there. It is one out of several occasions, because there had never been very serious frictions like that between the executive and the legislator about oversight this thing. It is already, it is not an assumption. It is constitutional, and the executive knows that. And then we are not under any pressure. We are not under pressure from the legislation that the executive is not taking us, that yes, it is the legislature that is supposed to oversee them. No, it is not like that. And going forward, we are very, like what happened yesterday, it sent message, able to would-be ministers and those people that have been either advisors or whoever in the executive and even in the judiciary, that yes, there are 3 arms of government. There is the executive, there is the legislature, and there is the judiciary. And it is the legislature that even is the soul and the summary of democracy. And without the legislature, then it means that democracy is not even functioning. That is just the summary. So, and then the legislature appropriates for the other arms of government. And then when you appropriate, you are the one who is supposed to supervise what you have appropriated for. It is pertinent and it is constitutional. So I don't have, and we don't have any problem about that function of the legislature.
Pardon me
we
if
know
I'm
that,
coming
and
there.
we are very sure, and then we believe that going forward, that kind of friction will not even occur.
Well, pardon me there, Senator Adamodu, your constitutional powers as the highest lawmaking body in the land is not in doubt, but some would say that the legislature itself is the one that courts disrespect. As a matter of fact, in the same 2020, the current Senate president, who was Minister of Niger Delta Affairs at the time, when he was being probed, quizzed, he said that, majority of the contracts go to members of the legislature. So does the legislature, in your own view, work to earn the respect, not just from the letter of the Constitution, but for the spirit of the Constitution as well?
I cannot hear you.
Okay. I'll take it again and make it as brief as possible this time around. I'm saying that your constitutional powers as the highest decision-making body is not in doubt, but really, some would say that does the legislature work to earn that respect? Because according to reports, the legislature courts favors, from members of the executive. And the current Senate president, while he was Minister of Niger Delta Affairs in 2020, had said that majority of lawmakers are themselves beneficiaries of contracts. So doesn't the legislature court this disrespect that it's now complaining about?
Well, well, that is very, very unfounded, because even as at then, that instance that you were quoting, so afterwards, when the then minister, so he said that he did not even see that legislators were taking contracts, because legislators are not contractors. And he said it categorically that he did not mention legislators that were taking contracts from the Ministry of Niger Delta, and that, you know, when the sensational story blows up, especially in Nigeria, so if it concerns the legislature, then Nigerians are ready to take side against the legislature, and it's never so, because even then, when media and everybody was questioning the then minister, he said categorically, and I know it because I was in the House of Representatives then, and I was a member of the committee in charge overseeing NDDC then. He said that he did not even say it that there is one legislator that got contract at NDDC through Ministry of Niger Delta. He said so, but it was a quotation out of context then. And going forward, there's one thing that the media should even be doing at times, which I even have always been saying, even to the media, that you can even oversee the executive, oversee the legislature, oversee the judiciary, find out some things. And how do we say that one? Because even there are some parastatals, when legislature asks questions, even before the parastatals give response, some Nigerians will just be saying that, oh, they are asking those questions maybe because they don't dance to the tune of the legislation. It is never so. Because Nigerians should even accept that legislation is supposed to oversee other arms of government. The legislation is supposed to bring them down to the tracks to ensure that they do what they are supposed to do. It is the legislation that appropriates for them. And it is the same legislation that is going to see and make sure that what is appropriated for the executive especially is utilized judiciously and for the benefit of Nigerians. But when questions are raised, then it is apt for many Nigerians to think that, oh, maybe the legislators are asking questions because they have demanded for social thing and then they were not given. And in the instance that you said, that you quoted about our Senate President when he was minister, he said it categorically, that he did not accuse any legislator in particular and generally that they had jobs taken at the NDDC or the Ministry of Niger Delta. Because when the thing was raging then, we demanded that, okay, we need to see the names when it became a talk of the town. So we came to the public there that we need to see the names of any legislator that has ever taken job in NDDC or in the Ministry of Niger Delta. Nobody came up with anyone and with any name and with any identity of the legislator there. And so by the time the question was posted to the then minister, he said that it was not true that he was accusing any legislator of taking jobs in the Niger Delta.
Well, Senator Adaramodu, I'm looking at the 2020 headline here, and it's quite clear. You know, it's direct as direct can be. But you're right that it hasn't been investigated, and I hope that the National Assembly will open its doors to that subject matter for investigation. But let's manage our time. Let me come to Mr. Adedayo with this very quick one, still on the ministerial screening. We saw last week how a female ministerial nominee was withdrawn, and we saw the introduction of the name of Mr. Festus Keyamo into the list, which has now, by the way, been expanded to 48. And some would say that the 35% affirmative action has not really been met by the president. And, you know, the name that has been introduced into the list is from the former administration. It was Minister of State twice. How fair is it that, you know, the name of a female ministerial nominee was withdrawn? Mr. Adedayo, that's for you.
Well, okay, Adebayo, number one, like I said, it's the right of the president to nominate. And when you are nominated to serve, it's a privilege, it's not your right. In the case of the person that was nominated, now he is from Kano State, So it doesn't have any gender implication because she was replaced with another woman. So a woman was removed and the woman was brought to replace. So it's not a gender issue, that particular incident. Secondly, Kano State is where the replacement came from. So I don't think it implicates politics of Kano. But generally, you can look at the issue of what the president promised with respect to affirmative action and what the APC promised. And it's for women to take note of that and realize that maybe he hasn't kept his promise, but his presidency is for 4 years. So he may not make the target the first time, but he should take note of it. And if he doesn't make it throughout, because he has the right to fire all the ministers next week and send another name to the Senate. So they will keep him under observation that he hasn't kept his promise and he may not keep his promise.
Well, that job is certainly cut out for the president, just as you have said. But you know, Chamberlain talked about this all-important issue of the situation in Niger and how concerning it is for us. Not too long ago, I think it was yesterday, that meeting held between the president and some states that where Nigeria shares border with Niger. There are those who are as concerned that some are reading more international dimensions to the situation in Niger, Mr. Adebayo, than local, which it actually is. For you, what are the critical issues? What are the And in what ways do you think Nigeria should prioritize the issues of the coup in Niger? It's a local issue, there's the regional, West African regional issue, there is an international dimension to it. Which one of them do you think is so pressing and so important that will definitely, affect one or the other, perhaps a little more importantly?
Well, it's a multidimensional issue, and different perspectives will come into it. If I was the president, I will look at the perspective in all ramifications. Number one is a geostrategic issue for security, because if someone can come to your neighborhood and they start toppling government, you want to find out who is doing it, why are they doing it, and that is a commander-in-chief consideration. Second issue is that it's a regional issue because they are ECOWAS citizens. Niger is an ECOWAS country. We are in one community where we have certain protocols governing us, and Niger has played a major role in formulating the protocols against unconstitutional governance. Niger has implemented it against other countries before, whether in Sierra Leone, whether in Liberia, whether in the Gambia, whether in Cote d'Ivoire. So, and I've attended many meetings of ECOWAS at head of state level, the authority, council of ministers level, even at the commissions level. And Niger has played a major role in ensuring that we enforce this kind of protocol in the past. So enforcing the protocol against Niger is not violating Niger's sovereignty, legally speaking. And then we look at it from a sub-regional point of view, that Niger and Nigeria were the same people. We speak the same language essentially, and our communities overlap and we interact all the time. So they are our people. So even if ECOWAS was not paying attention, we need to pay attention because we are neighbors. So, and then the citizens of Nigeria are worried about whether it's an invasion of our neighboring country. There are people who are concerned about the historical colonial history of Franco Niger injustice or other things. And there are those who are echoing the propaganda of international powers like Russia and France. So all of that will be taken into consideration. And then there was a communication of it that needs to be done in the public. But we know that, for example, at the international level, this is a power play is linked to what is happening in Eastern Europe, where Russia believes that the Western powers under NATO are violating the understanding between Bush and Yeltsin that the West and NATO will not go to the East, and Russia will not go to the South. So if they are coming to the East in Poland, in Norway, in Ukraine, then they too will come to the south and also undermine their interest. But we don't want to be collateral damage. But what is clear legally is that the coupists in Niger are not the government of Niger. That is clear under international law. De jure, they are not the government of Niger. The government of Niger is still the one asking for intervention. Secondly, de facto, they are not the government of Niger until they are recognized as such by matter of fact. So taking action against them does not amount to taking action against a sovereign state. No. If the government of that state, legitimate government, seeks assistance, it is under international law allowed to be given. However, because of the practicality of dealing with it, we need to do more consultation. The fact that the deadline, people have talked about deadline, that deadline is not cast in stone because of diplomacy. It's just a marker as to when they should indicate whether they are accepting the position of ECOWAS or they're not. But there is a lot of underground back and forth going on and conversation going on across regions, across international organizations. And I believe that the government's role is to, one, assure Nigerians that we will not take any action which will jeopardize our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Niger. Secondly, that we are not going to compromise the security of Nigeria. Three, we will not violate the constitution of Nigeria. So we will not declare war. It's not a case of declaring war. It's a case of confirming the ECOWAS protocol. Because if you are saying we should not break Nigerian law, we should also not break ECOWAS law, because by the law of subsidiarity, ECOWAS law are superior to Nigerian law when it comes to dealing with regional issues. So it's for the government to communicate it and to everyone.
Okay, well, we're winding down now, gentlemen. So, Senator, let me ask you, what does the Senate, I mean, your colleagues, what do they think of what is going on in Niger and how ECOWAS is handling it?
Oh, well, that's good. Just a few days ago, Mr. President, that's the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, sent a communication to the Senate about what the ECOWAS have been doing and what Nigeria, as the head of ECOWAS now, joined with other ECOWAS countries, what they have been doing in respect of the coup that happened in the Niger Republic at our backyard here. So he communicated to the Senate all the steps that have been taken. And then, you know, coup is a shock action. Then there must be shock response too. So the shock responses, like maybe go to the borders, managing the borders, closing some parts of the borders, the electricity issue, and so on and so forth. And at least those are the shock reactions to the shock action of the coupists in the Niger Republic.
Did the Senate approve the electricity matter?
It was an action taken by government of Nigeria, which is good and which is in tandem with the way Nigeria think that they can tackle the coupists. First of all, like I said, a coup is a shock action. Then there must be shock responses. And part of the shock responses from Nigeria is that issue of electricity and some other issues.
That affects the generality of the population, way beyond the coupists.
No, way beyond the coupists. Number one is that when there is a coup, and then the people that, the citizens of that country must know that an unexpected has happened, an unspeakable has happened, and that there must be some inconveniences so that the people, the citizens of that country will feel so pressured in order to tell the coupists that they are not doing them the best and that they should leave or they should vacate where they are occupied illegally and unconstitutionally. So that is the first, like I said it's a shock reaction. So that shock reaction by the government of Nigeria is in order. And the border issues, they are in order. Those are shock reactions. Then other reactions.
The ultimatum, which has elapsed.
The ultimatum, you know, the
option of force.
ECOWAS gave the ultimatum, and then the ultimatum is not cast in stone. So the ultimatum has lapsed on Sunday, and then the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria gave advices, and then we admonished ECOWAS, and then we extrude.
What did they advise on the option of force?
Look, the option of force has not even come to the Senate for debate. So there's no way we cannot advise what is not before us. Only the communication that was before the Senate was that these are the actions that have been taken so far. And then the Senate condemned that coup in its entirety. Okay. Then the Senate called on the ECOWAS Parliament to even put mouth there. And the Senate extols the federal government of Nigeria with other heads of states of ECOWAS that they should go on with diplomatic and political solutions.
Pardon me to interrupt you. Just to get on the time, is it true that northern senators have outrightly rejected any plan whatsoever to deploy troops for Niger?
In the Senate, there's nothing like northern senators, or southern senators, eastern senators, or western senators. Senate is one. And then when we are taking decision, we take decision together. So I'm not aware of either there's a sectional Senate. There's no Senate. There's no sectional Senate.
Well, there are those who say that the Senate has not been clear enough, has not been vociferous enough in terms of the clarity on the position of what the president sent to them on Saturday. Because we did read from our own correspondent saying that, you know, some news has been erroneously reported. Even as we speak this morning, some columnists are still, you know, writing on the fact that the Senate rejected the president's request for military intervention in Niger.
Like you posited, erroneously, it was very erroneous. Like I said, a communication was sent to the Senate by Mr. President. And that communication was the only record of what ECOWAS had taken, the steps ECOWAS had taken, so together with Nigeria as the head of ECOWAS.
So you clarified to us that there was no request.
There was never a demand from Mr. President whether to go to war or not to go to war. There was never a demand there. And it is in the Constitution that before war can be declared, either within or outside Nigeria, then the executive must revert to the Senate, to the even joint session of both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that demand was not on our table at all. So the issue of rejecting what is not on our table does not even arise at all. So there was no demand and so nothing to reject. So the only thing that was before us was a communication that so far this was what happened, this was what we have done. So just for our notice. And then we received the notice, and then we admonished, then we encouraged the federal government that since you have started taking the steps together with other heads of states of ECOWAS, political, diplomatic, go on and do that. When we get to the extreme, the government together with the ECOWAS head of states, when they take their decision, when it comes to the extreme, then the president will come back to the Senate and make a demand. Whatever demand that the president is making there is what we are going to debate on, is what we are going to take a position on. But for now, there's no position of the Senate about maybe using force or not using force. So that position has not even arisen at all. So there's no position like that. It's very erroneous for any report to say that the Senate has rejected this or has not rejected that. No, we have only extolled what steps ECOWAS, including our own government in Nigeria, as the head, has taken so far.
All right, Senator Yemi Adaramodu, Chairman, Senate Committee on Media, as well as Youth and Sports. And we'll also have Mr. Wole Adebayo, who himself was the presidential candidate of the SDP in the 2023 election. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you and good morning.
All right, we're back in just a moment, everyone. Stay on with us.
Philip Shaibu, my friend, in all that happened while we were talking about the Edo 14 that were unlawfully excluded from the inauguration, I never mentioned his name. June 17th, when we were excluded, 2019, I wasn't going to forget. He was the one who orchestrated it, together with the secretary to Governor Obaseki. Obaseki was just waiting for them to execute and report back to him. And indeed, like a czar, they reported to him and he was happy. The friendship was just marriage of convenience. And I knew it was going to fall apart because before then, Obaseki never wanted Philip to be his deputy. But Comrade Adams Ali Oshomole, the then governor, was trying to strike a beautiful balance between a technocrat and a politician, both having worked with him, one in the executive and the other one at the legislative arm. And he thought that fine blend would take Edo to the next level, which was what we campaigned with. But the moment he was able to settle that and the party began, which is the government began, Obaseki still suspected Philip. And he went on with that suspicion. When it was that time that he fell out with his boss, which is the then governor of Edo State, Comrade Adams Ali Oshomole, he saw in Philip a willing tool to bring down his father. And he accepted and he brought him down. Now, a reconciled enemy can never be trusted. In that regard, Philip was an enemy that was to go sooner than expected.
So is it true that the deputy governor, that this could have happened because the deputy governor wants to contest for the governorship election and the governor is not giving him his support?
2024 is coming. The governors usually, as they are, governors generally, we definitely want to, promote a successor. It's natural to be interested. He has seen that Philip is not on the line to be considered as one of his successors. Therefore, and Philip is ambitious. There's nothing wrong in being ambitious anyways. Human beings should be. And I encourage that. However, his boss doesn't want him, but he wants to be there. This is what is happening. And the boss thinks that, okay, if we don't take this out now, it will be something like a cancer that will spread and destroy the party internally. And internal explosion is worse than that, worse than external. And the man is saying, look, you can't contest.
Let me put it very clearly on record that I am not aware of any plots or any scheme to impeach the Deputy Governor, Right Honorable Philip Shaibu. I have also checked, and there is no such plan, or there was no such plan. I must state here that Comrade Philip Shaibu has never had the courtesy to discuss his ambition with me. What I hear is that he is consulting. Because the last time we spoke about my succession after the last House of Assembly elections, I did say that we should all be patient and that our task today is to try and finish well, to conclude all the projects we have started, and to unify and consolidate our party. Because it's only when we do these two things right would we have the support from our people to produce my successor. I made it very clear. And like you have pointed out, there's no timetable yet for the Edo elections. It will come later the year. So I believe that this action by him is just a preemptive move to get a court order, keep his position while he now moves to the other party to get a ticket.
Conversation started yesterday. Let's step it up a notch this morning with Olu Martins, who is Executive Director, Canvassers for Democracy and the Rule of Law. He joins us here in the studio. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Well, this conversation, about what's happening between the Governor of Edo State and the Deputy Governor of Edo State, it's not the first one is hearing of such in this Fourth Republic, Governor and Deputy Governor having one squabble or the other. But did you see this coming, given how they started?
Thank you very much. Please allow me, first of all, to commiserate with the Edo people. 2 years ago, we lost a shining star I'm talking about Captain Osa Okumbo. It's exactly 2 years, and I'd like to join the very many well-meaning Nigerians and Edo people to pray that God will grant the family the fortitude to bear the irreparable loss, and that God will raise somebody else like Captain Osa. Well, yeah, we're I sort of saw this coming.
Really?
Yes.
How long ago?
Coming. Well, maybe from the very beginning.
What were the signs you saw?
Because I was student union president when Philip Shaibu was NANS president. 1999, student union president, Ambosali University, he was NANS president from the University of Jos. So I kind of have an idea of his capacity. And we're talking about more than 20 years ago. So I kind of have an idea of his capacity. I kind of have an idea of his drive. So I knew that at some point in time, he was going to upscale. Because if you look at his political trajectory, I think he's been one of the luckiest young men, a man of speaking, to have, had political opportunities. So I knew that the drive was there. I have a problem with the methodology, right?
Is it a problem of drive now or ambition?
Well, to be honest with you, what drives an ambition, what fuels an ambition is a drive. So he has an ambition. And you can't begrudge anybody for having an ambition. It was Archbishop Idahosa that said, if you have a desire, do not retire, but refire to acquire your desire. So it's okay to have a desire, but you must also situate the desire within the ambit of fairness, equity, and balance. Because once you situate it between that, then you can, in expressing it, it's easy for you to express it in such a way that it finds anchor in the souls of very meaning Edo people who are clamoring for anchor. So I have a problem with the methodology. But let me quickly say a few things about what Washington Osifo said yesterday, because he kept making reference to the 14 House of Assembly members, and I can't really sympathize with him. He's pained, and he has a right, to be pained. But it's important to say that he didn't submit himself for inauguration, because he kept saying they were shut out. That House of Assembly, there were APC members who went for inauguration, because it's a mixture between APC and PDP. So it wasn't that it was just a PDP thing and they shot APC members out. There was an Emmanuel Agbaje that went for the inauguration who was in APC. So he quote unquote slept over his own right, because they were sure that Adams Oshomole was going to crush the governor at that time. They're going to have their way, because they also formed a parallel House of Assembly, in some hotel. But so I needed to put that in perspective. Secondly, he called the governor a stranger, and well, that's fine. He's a stranger. Governor is a stranger to how governance used to be done. Today, there are no parties. If you go to government house, it's government house. No court wars. There are no court rivalry right in government house. There are no wild parties in government house. Business is business. In fact, many of government offices have been restructured. So if you say it's a stranger to that, because that didn't happen, it's a stranger, we admit that, okay, maybe it should be a stranger to disrupt a system that is inimical to the advancement of governance and administration as far as Edo State and Nigeria is concerned. But who was more of a stranger? He was 4 years chief economic advisor to Adams Oshomole. When Adams Oshomole came in, Adams Oshomole had never had a stint in governance. He moved directly from NLC to become the governor of Edo State. So Adams Oshomole was more of a stranger. But we like that kind of a stranger who disrupts a status quo that doesn't espouse seriousness. Now governance is serious. You have a governor who doesn't blow siren, you don't see people coming to visit him, to distract him, from office. If you drive into a government house, you wonder whether you are in government house, because the business of governor is now the business, of governance. Thirdly, he said that Edo State was backward, and that grieves my heart, because I didn't think that he should demarcate his own state. You may not like Governor Obaseki, but Governor Obaseki is not Edo State. And if you have a problem with foreign media, because anytime they show Nigeria and they want to show Lagos, they will show Morocco, old Morocco. They will show Oshodi.
where there is heavy traffic, they will not show what the Atlantic City. They will not show what is married in Banana Republic, the Banana Island, because they create the impression that we are backward. And I don't think that as a former commissioner and as a bona fide citizen of Edo State, he should demarcate his own state. A lot is going on in Edo State, a whole lot, and he does need to come and see what is happening in Edo State. Edo State is the only state that is paying 40,000 naira. Edo State is the only place that has its own independent power project, 90 megawatts. What Edo State receives from DISCO is 110. What Edo State is now producing independent is 90. So what it means that when I have 190 megawatts
at what point did they raise?
So I take exception to the demarketing. He can differentiate his argument against the governor away from...
We don't have much time to deal with the real issues here. Governor Basiki can come and market himself by himself, but you know...
No, I'm talking about the demarketing.
No problem.
But I'm an Edo man, I need to deal with that.
At what point did this rift really begin? You said you saw it from the very beginning of the administration. What were the signs you saw? And is it that the governor didn't know that such a thing could happen?
You know, the governor is an institutional person, especially from his World Bank training. He didn't think that if he was traveling, for instance, the governor has handed over power 5 times to Philip Shaibu. So Philip Shaibu has been acting governor 5 times. I'm not sure that there's any governor who has done that. He's an institutional person. He doesn't think that governance is about one person. So there shouldn't be a vacancy. If I'm not there, you should, be there. When you give somebody something that he doesn't deserve, the first time is appreciation. The second time is expectation. Third time is anticipation. Fourth time is entitlement. So because you have a liberal governor, I mean, you can imagine this happening in River State. If you didn't, you can't do that in River State now. But you have a decent governor, and then you think that is now your entitlement. So when the governor began to say, we need a level playing field, it is not your entitlement to be governor. Edo North you are currently from Edo North. The minister designates is from Edo North. Adam Soshomole was from Edo North. Okiadomo was from Edo North. So between 1999 and now, deputy governor and governor, Edo North has had 24 years. I am from Edo Central, and I have what it takes to be governor. And several other persons when the governor began to say, look, we need to have a level playing field and consider those senatorial districts that may have been disadvantaged. I think at that point in time, Philip became uncomfortable.
Before we begin to explore the issue of zoning, let's address the matter between the governor and his deputy. If the governor is telling us that, look, there is no plan to impeach the deputy, and the deputy has gone to court, to lay out a number of accusations, one of which is don't use the SSS to intimidate me, allow me to perform my functions legitimately. Who do we believe between both men?
You should believe. I first of all tell people that for purpose of intellectual rascality, even though the governor has gone on to say we don't want to impeach the deputy governor, but is impeachment such a bad thing, really? To be honest with you, the impeachment clause wasn't put there for decorative purposes. I was student union president. I was impeached. But it was the greatest mistake they ever made, because it is weak people who seek for positions.
Impeachment is not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
But the deputy governor is saying that unless in the case of misconduct, you have no right to impeach me.
It is not the governor that impeaches, Sakma. It is the House of Assembly that impeaches. And the House of Assembly must impeach you. They don't want to impeach you. There must be an offense. What is the offense? Nobody can impeach you because you have an aspiration. So like the governor said, you are crying wolf. You are just trying to be preemptive. And this is not the first time it's happening in Nigeria. I find
it interesting that you said that it's not the governor that impeaches. Really?
It's not the governor that impeaches.
Okay.
By law.
Does
we know how impeachments go in Nigeria.
Does the governor have any role to play in an impeachment process of his own deputy?
He doesn't have by law. He doesn't have any role to play.
Okay.
We may infer
by law.
By law, he doesn't have any role to play.
How about by politics?
I don't like to do politics in the sense that I like to follow what the law says. Latin says res ipsa loquitur. The facts speak for themselves. It's written in black and white. The processes to impeach a deputy governor, and there's nowhere it says that the deputy governor will be impeached by the whims and caprices of a governor, and the deputy governor knows it.
You're saying that essentially there is no way a governor can play any role in the impeachment of his deputy.
Except the governor is tyrannical. Only a tyrannical.
So how come it is the governor of Edo State that comes out to say there is no such plan and not the Speaker of the House?
Because if you look at the court processes, the governor was first respondent. It was the governor he was referring to. The allegations were against the governor.
But he must know something, you know, from the background before he can name the governor as first respondent.
Then he should tell us what he knows from the background, because as far as we know, you see, impeachment procedure is not witchcraft at night. There's a process to it. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in a week. The chief judge must constitute a 7-man panel. An allegation must be raised on the floor, you know, of parliament. So let's not look at let us look at impeachment as if we're playing the game of what? Last card check up. It doesn't happen that way. There's a process for it. And what is instructional? Just yesterday, the leaders of Edo North visited, you know, the governor, because Philip Shaibu is the highest office holder in Edo North. When they wanted to take over the House of Assembly, Edo people moved to the street in protest for the governor. When Adams Oshomole had the same issue, Edo people kept vigil in the House of Assembly. I would have expected that Philip Shaibu's kit and clean would have come out in their number to support him. They may do that because I've said so now in preemptive arrangement, but not usually. It should be spontaneous. If indeed he has served the people, life is worth living, only to the extent that it is lived to the service of humanity. If you have not served humanity and then you have an issue like this, even if it were true, usually people would just sit back and say good riddance to bad
Let me quickly follow up with 2 questions. You talked about how you know, Mr. Washington demarketed Edo and you had reservations about it. But was he wrong on the point about both men being convenient friends at a time, and how, you know, the relationship was bound to, you know, fall again like a pack of cards because the governor never liked his deputy? Was he wrong about that?
He was. How do you say they were convenient friends? Governor Wike attempted, and for the want of what, to denigrate the office of the deputy governor. This governor took 2 pages in national dailies against his fellow governor, whom they meet at the governor's forum, to defend his governor, to say, his deputy governor, to say, look, the deputy governor has my support to do whatever he is doing, and that you cannot just denigrate the deputy governor like that. When they were seeking for the ticket of PDP, the PDP wanted a trade and said, give us the deputy governor. You can't have the yam and the knife. That meeting took place in Chief Raymond Dokweshi of the blessed memory in his house in Agenebode. And the governor said, look, I came in with this man. We will sink and swim together. I can tell you that that is the crux of the rift that the governor has with the party. He says, I must stick with my deputy. Otherwise, the arrangement normally will be, if we are giving you a ticket, we'll give you a ticket. But the party must now supply the deputy governor. And the governor stood stoutly for him. How can that be a convenient arrangement when the governor has demonstrated copiously again and again that I like this young man, and I'd like for us, you know, to continue governance for the betterment of the Edo people.
So in trying to understand what is the responsible for the rift now, what is the offense, if I may ask, of Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu, besides aspiring to become governor, succeeding his principal?
He's the only one that we can ask, because they say he who alleges must prove. He's the only one that can answer what, you know, his offense is, because we too do not know the offense that he thinks that he has committed, for which he's afraid of, you know, impeachment. I can't speak for him.
We have to go now, Mr. Martins, but just a quick one. Are you completely vindicating Governor Obaseki in all of this arrangement, that he has no fault whatsoever?
The governor, as far as I'm concerned, the conviviality between the governor and the deputy was obvious to what? The deputy governor in Nigeria is the most visible deputy governor. Philip Shaibu is the most visible deputy governor in this Fourth Republic. No governor has given his deputy the latitude and the freedom of expression as the governor has done. And in fairness is that I told it, I mean, some people tell the governor that, maybe, it's your fault, because sometimes some people don't know how to use such privileges and use it modestly.
The point has been made, Mr. Martins, and one just can only expect that for the love of the people of Edo State, all of this will be dealt with amicably. But we have to thank you for now for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Edo Martins is Executive Director, Conversers for Democracy and the Rule of Law. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Now, your own content on this program this morning. Henry Okeke, let's begin with your own mail, says it's imperative that the ministers, when eventually sworn into office, must maintain the same humility and magnitude of respect for the legislature as they appeared for screening. The respect is not for the individual members of the National Assembly, but for the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which created the National Assembly, and for sustainability of the rule of law and the principles of separation of power.
Well, Professor Inakina says the screening is almost done. Attention must shift to governance and the parliamentary oversight to guide the ministers and guard the sustainability of the democratic ethos, which opined that despite the separation of the organs of government, they must not work at cross purposes, but work to complement each other's work for the dividends of democracy to trickle down to ordinary folks.
And Oshinowo Kingsley is tweeting. He says, Nigeria remains a rallying point in ECOWAS and Africa as a whole. We can't afford to be pushed into war with our neighbor. Let's bear in mind the security challenges we have in the north. The people of Niger should rise up themselves to reject autocratic ruling.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all, as always, for letting us be a part of your day. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Train Baluna, so have a very good day.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for your feedback as well. I'm Malkwe Ogun Yusuf.
Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.